So, good morning, and so welcome to the Pimento Business Development Club. This is the final one of the year, and it is set to be a cracker as we're going to be exploring the success of the Festival of New Business. The aim of the BD Club is to help independent agencies with all aspects of new business, marketing, and growth, and to provide new ideas, thinking that's going to help support their own approaches to their sales and their growth. I think this is critical at this moment in time. If you saw the recent post by Ivan Fernandez on LinkedIn, his message that he had said across today was around that holding companies are no longer trusted to navigate the future as they are built for yesterday's problems and not tomorrow's realities. I think it's essential that indies can really look to explore how they can take advantage of this, and this is what the BD Club is all about. So if you don't already know me, I'm Paddy Woods. I'm the founder of Pimento Fuse, and this is a new business consultancy built to support independent agencies, marketing, and new business. If you haven't been on previous calls, please use the chat box to ask questions, and I'll look to get you into the call as we progress down the line. So today's session is exploring the core outcomes from the Festival of New Business. We're going to be looking at the key themes, what it means to agencies, and what agencies need to do to be doing to shift their growth trajectory for 2026. I think this is critical considering next week we've got the announcement from the Chancellor, and it could be that conditions could get worse for agencies. So it's really looking about how we overcome this uncertainty and how we can actually protect ourselves in the future as well. So joining me, I have Stephen Knight and Rachel White. We were supposed to have Marcus Brown on the call from the Great Pitch Company, but he's been called away to an urgent client situation, which he couldn't get out of. So Stephen and Rachel, I'd love you to do a quick introduction to yourself, please.
Go on, Rachel. You go first.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I'm the founder of Studio White Marketing Consultancy, and I'm also the director over at Pimento Fuse as well. So I work alongside the Pimento team, and I support the Pimento members with any services that they need to grow and strengthen their marketing and new business efforts.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Stephen.
All right.
Morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Knight. I'm the Chairman and CEO of Pimento, and I've been doing this 20 years. I've spent my life in agency land as well as client side, and we set up Pimento just over 20 years ago. And most of you, I think, probably will know me through Pimento or through my previous life. Dell, good to see you, sir. Looking very, very fit and very thin. But yeah, no, thanks for popping along. We're going to sort of share some insights from the recent Festival of New Business, some of the key outputs and some of the actions that you may well want to take or consider taking in your consultancy, your agency. And along with Paddy and Rachel, we've prepared some slides which we're going to whip you through and then open it up to questions, which Paddy has prepared, and obviously very excited for you guys to get involved because it's supposed to be interactive and hopefully a bit of fun too.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. You just finished off with what I was going to say. So I'm going to...
There you go. Sorry, don't follow you.
That's all right. I'm going to share the presentation now. Just let me know when you want to flip it on.
Okay. Well, you'll get a copy of this afterwards, so don't worry about taking your notes, and you're probably all using Fireflies or whatever. This deck, first slide, please, Paddy, is based upon the output from all of the presentations that we had at the Festival of New Business, which is a new event that we ran this year. Many of you on the call today attended, some of you unable to make it. If you didn't make it, you missed a bloody good day. It was pretty great. We had nearly 200 agency leaders, over 30 speakers. We also had an exhibition area from key people within the industry who basically helped support agency growth. And the approval ratings from the output were a remarkable 93%. So if you did come along, thank you for joining us. If you couldn't make it this year, we will be releasing the dates for next year because we had such good feedback. We're going to do it all again. So I think the first thing to say is that the atmosphere in the room and also in the breakouts and in the sort of social networking time were best described as optimistically real. I mean, there's a realism. I think that obviously the economy is in a bit of a state at the moment. Business hasn't been easy to come by. And it's not like we don't know that actually it's been tough, because it's been pretty tough for the last 2.5 years. Pretty much after COVID, we had 18 months of growth. Everyone got very excited. It was back to where we were pre-COVID. Since which time, for a lot of agencies and consultants, it's been pretty tough. think it's fair to say that the festival wasn't about sort of shiny new objects. It wasn't kind of a single thing that everyone honed in on, nor was it kind of doom and gloom and concern about AI disruption. In fact, quite the opposite. I think a lot of good agencies and consultants are really thinking about how can they use AI, how can they bring it along into their conversations with their clients, and how can they utilize it to drive positive disruption. And I think the other kind of key outtake was actually that business is business, and ultimately the human qualities are the most important thing in our daily conversations with our clients. So, we all have the ability to build long-term relationships. Those are absolutely essential to driving agency growth, and technology alone won't do that for you. I've got 11 takeaways for you, 11 things for you to consider. I'll whip through them now very quickly. If we can go to slide 3, which is titled Human First. So I guess the largest drumbeat of the day is that people buy from people. No shit, Sherlock. But we just have to remind ourselves that actually that's our role. People, clients buy us because of our insights, our intellect, our experience. They can't do it all through AI. And that whilst AI should be a component and part of their strategy and part of the efforts to improve their efficiencies, not just in marketing, but right across their businesses, they need to basically recognize, and we all recognize, the value of human input, particularly when it comes to originality. I think attendees compared notes throughout the day, basically talking about how they are using their relationships with their existing client base to carry more weight. We also spoke about the need for content development, and actually recognizing that actually agencies or clients, prospective clients, are far more interested in a sincere selfie with a clear point of view, rather than a kind of beautifully honed and manicured video. Actually sincerity, and actually getting your team in front of the camera, and actually having a point of view, having an insight, doing some research, really understanding their business. That can be far more impactful than spending oodles on production. Not to say there isn't a role for high quality videography, but in most cases, particularly in the kind of LinkedIn space and elsewhere where you might be communicating, it's about human first, or it doesn't land. Next slide, please. AI absolutely is everywhere, and you all probably sick to the teeth of it, but the reality is, agencies, I think about 90% of agencies are now using AI on a daily basis. It's incredible, it's not 100%. And the way in which they're using it is to do the grunt work, and very much, focusing on what they do best, but using AI to accelerate and to allow them to sort of trigger and draft and create first pass research, summarizing meetings, as I'm sure you are at the moment, qualifying inbound, shaping video scripts, stitching together workflow process, and so on, rather than basically outsourcing judgment or pretending that LMMs are strategists. That they're not. They're great at giving you insight. They're great at actually giving you context, but you can't basically bet the farm on them. And also, you have to question the feedback that you get through AI. If you don't question that, then you end up in lawsuits, as we've seen from a couple of the big consulting firms in America. So there's a lot more of that to come to, I think, next year. So 2 principles keep coming up. First of all, be transparent with clients when you're using AI. Yeah, recognize obviously it helps enormously. Second, train your teams to use these tools well, rather than banning them per se or pretending they're some sort of evil magic. The goal is not for fewer thinkers, quite the opposite. The goal is obviously to embrace AI and actually bring in HI, and then classically you will be in a position to give better advice. But focus on repetitive tasks and processes, and don't let AI interfere with your creative judgment or your thinking. In some respects, and going back to this sort of glory days of the advertising world, it's a little bit like a executive creative director having 20 teams working on the client project. That is the way to think about AI. And at the end of the day, judgment, insight, and creativity are immensely important. And that goes also for strategy. Next slide, please. Value over volume. This is something Jeremy, you're on today's call, you've been arguing for a long, long time, which is that we spend too much time selling our hourly rates, and there has to be a better way to be remunerated. The danger, as we all know, in selling hourly rates is negotiable. That clients and particularly procurement teams can get their teeth into that. And whilst you can enlarge the scope and play with the number of hours, etc., ultimately it's not a good way to sell what you do. Selling projects and selling totality of what you do and on selling a fixed price is also useful, but again, you can find you end up over servicing it. So, if we can move more towards value-based pricing, if it's possible to be able to tie your work back to some sort of outcome, be that a financial outcome or an awareness-based outcome or a lead management outcome, whatever the metric is, then tying part of your value prop to what you achieve does two things. First of all, it aligns what you do with the success that you generate, and that can be no bad thing. Secondly, obviously, it ingratiates you to the FDs of this world when you're talking to them. And thirdly, it kind of makes it a damn sight easier to go and sell on to your next client because you've got demonstrable evidence of success. So mull it over. It's not always possible. In the past, where I've tried to get clients basically to work in this space and to think about value propositions and how we can add value to their business, they've been reluctant to do it, partly because they can't narrow down the specific effect that a single campaign or activity or strategy can have on a business, and partly because they don't feel they've got the time or the way in which they can measure that. So I wish you luck. I think it's something we're going to have to break through, and maybe AI will help us get there. Next slide, please. Make your propositions pointy. Too many agencies, and you ask yourself this, have a look at your website, have a look at your communications, share your communications and your websites with colleagues, with other agencies, with other members if you're members of Pimento, and be ruthless about it. Are you trying to solve a problem that matters commercially for your clients? If you are marketing yourself as a full service award-winning agency, you're not helping to differentiate what you do. You're not actually setting yourself apart. And I think particularly in the world where we have nearly 26,500 independent agencies in the UK, and let's be honest about it, next year we're going to have a stack more as WPP restructures itself, as the large global agencies start to basically merge with each other. There will be the creation of lots of new agencies, I suspect. So it's not going to get any easier. So having a strong proposition, being really clear about what you stand for and what you do, it's not just about actually having a really good sales tool. It's actually central to your DNA. It's what you are. It's your own brand proposition, and it should dictate how you allocate resource. It should dictate the sorts of clients that you go after, the way in which you embrace and use tools like AI, the sorts of people that you hire, how you productize your business, how you produce content, and also the partners that you want to work with. And it's ironic, isn't it, that we've got agencies like WPP, I keep picking on them, but they're easy to pick on at the moment, are spending all their time basically killing brands, 100-year-old brands, rather than actually thinking about how can they reposition these brands, how can they actually create a pointy purpose, how can they build on the heritage of a JWT, an Ogilvy, a Mather, or whoever it happens to be, rather than just basically cutting down the number of brands that they own, DDB being the latest one potentially, and killing off resource and closing offices. It's about your own brand protection, your own brand proposition. It's about making sure that you are fit for purpose. And frankly, if other agencies, when they look at your website, don't understand what you do, what chance have clients got? Okay, next slide, please. Short term versus long term. I think you all know this. Reality is, when we talk to our clients, we talk about the long and short of it. We talk about demand creation in balance with brand building. The reality is that, again, as things get more competitive, Whilst people buy from people, there's real value in building a strong brand proposition as an agency or as a consultancy or as a consultant. Being really clear on that and actually creating a balance in your own marketing activities and your own communications is incredibly important. So everything that you do should ladder up to a single-minded brand proposition. You know this is what you tell your clients, but we so often forget to do it when it comes to our own business, which is why businesses like Pimento Fuse and others exist, because it's so difficult sometimes to be objective when you're looking at yourselves. So I won't burden you with that one too long. We'll move on to the next. This again is really important, and I touched on it on the first slide. Authenticity. Again, shiny videos are lovely, and we've got lots of really good production companies within Pimento that do some fantastic work. But equally, too, authenticity is particularly important. You as an individual or you as an agency have the opportunity to impart your own personality on your brand and what you do. I would suggest that if you are an agency, you don't have a single figurehead that's doing that for you. You spread the love amongst the team, you encourage them to participate, you reward them for great content, you celebrate their voices, and without unleashing chaos, you ensure that basically there's some guide rails around it, but actually, put yourself out there, put the agency out there, find ways to communicate, build an audience, using your LinkedIn profiles, start to get out there. The whole LinkedIn algorithm is a bizarre and weird thing. I probably post 3 to 5 times a week, which sounds like a lot. And my average posts get anywhere between 12 to 1500 views. And then I do a post for no apparent reason that features my daughter and it gets 27,000 hits. So go figure. Maybe the world hasn't changed. So yeah, I think, being authentic, getting the agency out there and spreading the love across the agency is particularly important, and get those young voices heard. Next slide, please. This is another cracker, and it's kind of something we think about all the time. And I'm sitting in the offices of Initials, who are position themselves as a creative agency, but they're completely focused on the whole customer experience for their clients, and they do quite a lot of shopper marketing. If you think of yourselves as a retailer, how easy is it to do business with you? How can potential clients connect with you? How do they find you? There's so many agency websites that frankly fail to clarify what they do, make it pretty impossible to connect. And God forbid if you have a landline telephone number on that, no one ever picks up. Gone are the days of obviously having agency receptions. People are working odd times. Some come in 2 days a week, 1 day a week. Some don't come in at all. So make it easy. Mystery shop your own agency or get other people to do the same. See how easy it is to connect and find you. And also consider your buying audience. This is absolutely essential. We think about who is buying you, who's going to like to buy your services, what are the entry points, how can we de-risk that first step? Part of the reason why Pimento is successful is because clients are confused by the choice. There are just so many agencies, selling so many different services, and therefore they like to come to someone who can basically kind of work with them on their brief and find the right solution and resource for them. All I would suggest to you is that, a lot of agencies just don't use credible language. They use language that is kind of mixed and confused between marketing speak, talking to marketing people, which then kind of completely misses the point that very often the people who will be shopping you will be the heads of finance, will be IT professionals, may well be other board members. And ultimately, they are going to be gatekeepers to your appointment. So try and look at your content, publish short, plain English explainers, be clear about customer journeys, and make it very easy for people to engage and connect with you, not just in your websites, but in all the other forms of communication. Now, I saw a piece, we put it out this morning, so we're as guilty as anyone else, where there was a promise of the ability to be able to actually download a recent video, and I couldn't find the link. Could just be me because I'm 110 years old, but I couldn't find a link in the communications. And actually if you make an offer, make it easy for people to be able to get hold of that information. Okay, nearly done. Next slide, please. Again, the thing that came out, don't kind of wallow in the fact the UK market has been pretty poor in the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of good agencies are looking to partner with other agencies and starting to recognize that the UK, relatively speaking, is a low cost, highly experienced market. I joked a few weeks ago that the UK, when you compare it with North America, we are roughly half the price per hour than our US counterparts. And of course, they're buying in dollars that's rising against the pound. So increasingly, we are better value than we once were. So in the same way as we used to outsource stuff to India and other parts of the world, a lot of US agencies and clients are outsourcing to UK agencies. So think about that and think about actually how do we build relationships in those marketplaces? Can we connect through organizations like with Pimento and others like Network One? We also work very closely with mission hubs and find agency partners in different marketplaces we can work with. Or frankly, invest some money in actually opening up an office. Ultimately being there is a lot more valuable than partnering, and having local talent that understand the culture, understand sensitivities, and have that kind of local knowledge is essential, particularly in markets like Dubai, where everyone's been rushing off to recently. You also have to, I think, expect if you are going to reach out to these markets that you're going to be obviously working different time zones. That's going to affect obviously kind of different rhythms within the agency. You also have to think about actually what communication tools you use with those clients. WhatsApp etiquette is very different in, say, Dubai than it is over here. But having said all that, I think there's really large opportunities out there. The prize is really real. We've had 6 agencies that have opened up offices in Dubai in the last 12 months. We have agencies that derive at least 50% of their revenue from North America. All I would say is develop a business plan, find the right partners to partner with, connect with organizations like Marketing Society and others, and work with the Advertising Association who have got people who can help you. And don't just do a 12-month plan, do a 2-year plan, because it's going to probably take you 2 years to start to see the return on investment. But however large or small you are, it's certainly worth looking into. Next slide, please. Culture. This is one that never really goes away. And again, it's very much part of the whole area of authenticity. Certainly in terms of differentiation of an agency and a brand, I believe that culture is immeasurably important. And you feel it when you go into an agency, whether an agency has a good culture, whether a business has a good culture. And those kind of fits and the whole concept of chemistry when it comes to developing relationships with clients are incredibly important. So I guess, agencies aren't particularly good at tracking culture. They don't necessarily measure it as much as they might. There are various organizations that actually do that, often for free. And some of the surveys that are run by people like the Alliance and others are worth actually getting involved in, because I think you will get a better understanding of how people see you, how prospective employees rather see you. And I think it's important that you build culture into your daily communications with your teams. This all sounds a bit Janet and John, I know, but it's worth resaying, or even reselling. So share generously, celebrate experiments and not just outcomes. Be prepared to actually help and assist the development of culture, recognizing that we're probably not in a situation where you've got people coming 5 days a week, and therefore you need to bridge those video gaps. You need to find ways to create moments of culture. Culture needs to be embedded in your brand ethos and what you're about. And it doesn't frankly matter whether you are a 1-person agency or a 300-person agency. You still have to walk the walk and talk the talk and be real. Very, very important. And the last chart. Yay! But one actually. There's one other asking this. Um, Everyone does this. We get so excited about the bright, the shiny, bright new stuff. Working with a new piece of business, cracking a new client, getting into a new sector. Reality is, very often or not, we just forget that actually, if we invested as much time in our existing client relationships, would they give us a higher level of return than actually putting disproportionate time and effort into creating relationships with new clients? Um, some of the stuff we used to do is still relevant today. I've been rewatching Mad Men right from the beginning, actually. Absolutely love it. I'm on series 5 now. And whilst those are times of the past, there's some basics in there, some brilliant basics that are so important today. Great client management leads to long-term commercial success. Are you investing in training your people to manage their relationships with your clients, with their clients? Does everybody in the agency know how to manage their clients? It's not just for account management. Everybody actually has a responsibility. When we talk about culture, we're trying to create cultures of growth, ensuring that everybody is accountable and responsible for driving new business and is rewarded as such. Do invest in that. Do invite your clients into the office. How many clients actually come to your office? If you've got an office, if they don't have an office, how often do you actually get to see them and get them out of their homes, offices, or whatever, and meet up physically? Do you introduce your existing clients to each other? Are you seeking ways to build partnerships between those clients? Do you have an annual client plan? Yeah, how many of you have met with your existing and previous clients in the last quarter as we move into the end of Q3, as they're trying to establish what their business objectives are for next year? Are you sitting down with them? Are you having conversations with them? Have you gone back to the clients that spent money with you the year before last and perhaps haven't spent money with you this year? I connected with a client that we'd basically been talking to for 3.5 years the other day, and we've invested a reasonable amount of money in that relationship and yet to actually get a return on the investment. Brief comes through within 24 hours, we've answered the brief and they've actually awarded a piece of business to one of our members. But that's because we invested 3 years in that relationship to get to that point. But the absolute cost of pitching for something relative to investing in the odd lunch, the odd activity, an event of some nature is very, very small by comparison. So get out there, love your clients, love the one you're with. Last chart, sir, and then we'll hand it out for everybody. Okay, collaboration or die. Now, of course, I would say this, wouldn't I? But actually, it is true. I think there's huge recognition in the room from the festival that collaboration is essential. In fact, it's vital, particularly at the moment as the market is evolving so quickly. As indie agencies and indie consultants, we all need to create our own network of people who we like, agencies and people that we respect and like working with. We need to do that for a number of reasons. First of all, we all learn from each other. There are 97, probably over 100 now, different marketing disciplines. There's new SaaS products being created on a daily basis that actually change the way in which we communicate to prospects. How are you going to learn all that stuff? How are you going to be aware of what you should be doing in your own marketing if you actually don't take the opportunity to speak to other agencies and kind of develop what I call that sort of soft learning? So I would suggest engage with other agency leaders, share your own knowledge. Don't be afraid. You're not competing directly with each other. In anything, you actually will learn from each other. You'll grow your businesses. You'll build long-term relationships with other agencies and other consultants that will inevitably lead to new business opportunities. And frankly, we all came into this business because it's a people business and it's supposed to be fun. We've got to bring that back. And I think, therefore, key outtake for me from the festival was, one, don't be afraid of AI. Embrace it across your business. Be honest with your clients. Two, love the one you're with. Get out there, extend your relationships with your existing clients, become a partner in their business, have insights, have a point of view. Three, put your people first and front in your business. Get them out there, get them talking about what you do, get them involved in your business, create a culture where anything is possible and everyone can contribute to the future growth of your business. And I believe that if you do all those great things, then 2026 will be a fantastic year, despite whatever Rachel tells us at the end of this month. We've got to find ways to continue to build our businesses. Otherwise, the alternative is we just all give up. And I don't think that is something that none of us want. I don't believe we're at that particular point in our lives. And I do think that we've actually got a huge opportunity to contribute to the growth of our clients and the growth of their businesses, and frankly, have some fun at the same time. So that were the key outtakes. I hope that was useful. We will talk about some of those. And now, if you've got questions, I believe we're happy to open up to questions. I think Paddy's going to lead the way.
Sorry, my
Paddy.
daughter just got back from college, so she was making too much noise with the puppy, so apologies. Rachel, I'm going to come to you just very quickly, and then please do ask questions in the chat because it'd be great to get you involved. So Stephen talked about authenticity and positioning and be a sort of being a core part of what agencies really need to differentiate themselves from the marketplace at the moment. Which is cluttered. So how do you go about doing that, and what does true authenticity look like? 'Cause you're involved in the positioning panel. I think it's really important that the two combine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, off the back of when I was at the festival, I delivered the panel and we talked about proposition, and authenticity very much sits within that. So it's about, taking it back to its absolute basics, who you are, what you do, knowing who you do that for, and then it's how you communicate. And I, try and make marketing as simple as possible. And it really does, boil down to, if you want to create your own authenticity, whether it's your own personal brand or whether it's for the business, it really is those 4 points of knowing who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and then how. Because once you get to that how point and you can start looking at the messaging, you know exactly how to tailor that kind of authenticity about yourself to the market that you want to reach out to. But it's also about being true and consistency. So once you've identified your own personal brand or your business brand, stick to it, be authentic, because people will then get to know, they'll get to like you. And if they don't, that's fine, because they're not aligned with you, or they might not be aligned with your business, which then means that they're not your ideal client profile. So they're not someone that you do want to, do work with. So I would always say that, be true to who you are when you create that kind of authenticity, and it will enable you then to really stand out. And it's the standout piece that is the differentiation. What's your distinct point of difference to why you, against many other consultants or many other big agencies, why do you stand out? And it's how you then kind of cut through that noise as well. So, and
I agree. And actually, being opinionated and almost being Marmite is a really good thing, because you don't want cultures, toxic cultures that impact your business, because I've seen agencies crumble because of that.
Yeah, exactly. But be consistent, because the worst thing that you can be is chopping and changing, because you're trying to fit who you think now needs to be your audience. But if you don't know who that audience is in the first place, then you're not going to feel stable. So it really is about going back to those 4 key areas. And I keep repeating them, and I'm like a broken record when I speak to my clients about it. But the first thing I do when I sit down with a new client is that, well, who are you? What do you do? What are you known for? Because then from that we can say, well, we can start looking at how you become authentic out there, but be consistent with it as well, because that creates your credibility, and that in itself creates the advocacy around you. And then that creates referrals, because people like you and they start referring back to you. But if you're inconsistent, then you're just creating a whole mess for yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Stephen, you talked about sort of collaboration, and actually collaboration or die. And actually, how do agencies really go about collaborating? And do they look at sort of how do they share commercial opportunities? How do they deliver to that wider growth? Because it is becoming more and more important. And I worked with an agency I was supporting. We worked with Under Armour, and Under Armour would bring in all their agencies into one room to collaborate, and it'd be led by one agency leading the strategy and leading the way, and everyone's contributing. So that's one example. But what other ways can actually agencies really dive in and lean into this collaboration approach?
It's actually, Alex has just put a very similar question about that. Aside from the wonderful Pimento, are there other agency events and agencies you should consider for new business? So first of all, I think there are. I think there's some really good ways in which you can build up your relationships with other organisations. There's some very good ones. I think the Alliance of Independent Agencies is a good starting point. They're not really commercially focused. They are kind of yin to our yang. insofar as their focus is very much on representation of the independent industry, helping with formal training and development. They're particularly good at developing, and they've got a great academy for training younger people. But they do run events and activities that you can engage around. Rachel has recently come back, say recently, it feels like ages ago now, from Ibiza, from the Agency Hackers event. I think that was time well spent, and she topped up the tan at the same time. So I think, again, it just brings you in contact with other agency leaders. At a local level, a lot of businesses will have local LEPs, local networking organizations, some of which will be outside of what you do. I mean, I was involved in one when I first moved to the Cotswolds that was based actually throughout the region. Jeremy was kind enough to introduce me to them, and there were accountants and there were lawyers, there were kitchen fitters and Christ knows what else. So it was a very broad range of different businesses. But actually, off the back of that, it led to 2 or 3 opportunities. And I think Jeremy will also testify to the fact he's also got business from it. So, most important thing is don't sit there, get out, get off your hind legs, put yourself forward, learn to network, even if you hate it. Yeah, if you're kind of incredibly introverted and you hate basically talking to people at events like that, you've got to basically almost learn the rules, be prepared not to kind of pitch as soon as you have it over a drink. It's more about actually getting to know what the other person does, getting to know them as a person. It's like building any relationship up. So, short of creating a Tinder for business where you can sort of swipe left for new business, swipe right for not interested, although that might be an interesting idea. I think you just need to get yourself out and, search by all means what's available at a local level, find out from organisations like the British Chamber of Commerce whether you can get involved in activities. It really depends upon the size of your organisation, the capacity you've got internally for people to activate and get out there and do these things. Don't be the only person. I mean, Alex, you're a great example. You're somebody who goes out, Alex, from mostly media, and will engage, go to events, will travel the distance. We're up in Glasgow tomorrow, for example. And there are members of the Pimento network traveling all the way up to Glasgow to meet agencies there. So I think you just got to put the time in and do it, but it doesn't always need to be just you. I think everyone in the agency has some accountability and responsibility, especially the youngsters.
The other thing as well, I know Burn, when it existed, they created their own networking event around their area. So they would host sort of businesses into their location just to just talk and share, because everyone's got similar sort of challenges. So it's really about how can you do it? If it's not around you, build your own.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of members within Pimento that do just that. So there's a whole digital group that move around the UK and have lots of events, and they get 100 odd people to those events. And they've been really good at passing business backwards and forwards to each other. And the other thing is also, there's activities out there that you can get on the back of organised events that run across the UK, where agencies basically are in front and pitching to clients. So again, if somebody wants a list of those, then drop me a line and I'll provide a list of those organisations to you.
Brilliant, thank you. And so, Stephen, you were talking about sort of initials, and actually that sort of commercial collaboration side of things, or you leaning in, you're both doing a project together and an event together to actually benefit both of you. How do you go about doing that? How do you make sure that you're aligned? Because often you can end up with crossover and challenges, and actually how do you break the barrier?
So in this instance, and it's something that we're very comfortable in doing, we're very happy to partner with Initials. They've been doing a lot of research into the impact that weight loss drugs are going to have on the grocery sector in the UK, on food manufacturing, alcohol, leisure, travel, hospitality. All sectors are going to be basically impacted on actually the physical change in people's appearances through weight loss drugs and what they can and what they can't eat, etc., etc. They've just completed this piece of research. It's really interesting piece of research, and given the impact it's going to have on businesses in the UK, currently I think 67% of all UK adults are obese. That's huge. Go back to the 1970s, it was less than 15%. So we're going to be hosting an event with them targeting clients in January. It'll be a joint event. We'll do a physical event in London at their offices, which will be a breakfast meeting, obviously a healthy breakfast. And we will basically take the opportunity to find brands in each of those sectors and to come along. So we'll manage the event on their behalf. It's like a 6 p.m. for clients. And then we're also going to do a webinar for agencies afterwards. So we're always open to that. If it adds value to the relationship, in this case with the agency, if it allows us to get in front of clients who could benefit all members within Pimento, then obviously happy to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. Rachel, I'm coming back to you, talking about you talked about can take 2 years, and in fact, Stephen talked about it could take 2 years to build relationships. And it's the same over in the UK. Actually, I think the average sales cycle is about 18 months at the moment. How do you go about sort of proving that sort of value-based sort of approach, and how do you prove yourself and the value you could bring to a client before the pitch? This was the question Marcus was going to ask. I was going to ask Marcus, but I've just come to you. Sorry.
That's fine. You can put me right on the spot. No, it's no problem. I think you've just got to evidence what you do. So generally people will get new business as a result of referral, which is amazing. That's kind of like, that's the best way we want it, because somebody has already done the work for you. So if you don't get business off the back of a referral, hopefully it's not down to the fact that, it's not you, it could be budget or whatever. But so if it's then somebody's come to you and you need to get across your value, that can be done many ways. So it's either through your own personal brand, whether you're present on LinkedIn, people will look for these things, or whether, if the business, the agency, if they're not on LinkedIn either, they haven't got a very big presence, people will go looking for information to actually prove that you are who you are and you do what you say you do. Obviously things like testimonials, case studies, website, it's all that social proof. So just evidencing that you can do exactly what you say you can do, and that you're not just reliant on people kind of referring you. You've actually got that hard evidence to back it up. And also, kind of people can talk the talk, but when you do speak to people, if you've got all of these real life examples of when you've done certain things, and you can obviously match the solutions to the client or prospective client you're talking to, they'll have their pains. If you can match the solutions with all your years of experience that you can draw upon, that again, just kind of proves what you do and proves your value.
Brilliant, thank you. And Stephen, just sort of before I come to the last question from myself, you talked about culture, you talked about sort of that and proving your value. That combining the two, actually, a lot of agencies are risk averse, and sort of don't try and get on top of everything that the opportunity they can bring. How can actually leadership really create their cultures where experimentation feels safe and not risky? So an agency, my wife's agency at the moment, they're exploring how can they get sort of investment from sort of government to help them change certain elements of a product they work on, or how they got involved in South by Southwest in Austin last year just by reaching out and doing the right things. How can leadership really get involved in that and make sure that their culture becomes sort of moving it forward and becomes experimental in terms of not staying safe?
It's a huge area, and we could probably spend an entire session just talking about that. I think that the basics are basically about authenticity again. So it's back to what Rachel was talking about earlier on. You can't invent it. You can't say, "Oh, we're going to be green today, and we're going to be pink tomorrow afternoon, and yellow the day after." You've got to basically inherently have that culture coming down very often from the top of the organization, and that storytelling has to basically be viewed with everyone in the organization. You have to hire against it. You have to train for it. You have to be really clear about your values, what your proposition is, what you stand for, what your mission is, all the stuff you do for the brands that you work with. The reality is very often we just don't do it for ourselves. It's the old adage of, the mechanic with his car up on bricks, or the tailor that doesn't, have a decent suit. So you've got to put that time in. It's very difficult to do it on your own. Sometimes you need external support to actually hold a mirror up to the organization, to challenge the owners of the business to be actually true to themselves. So I think it's always worth investing a little bit of energy, time. Agencies don't like using consultants themselves because they think they know it all. Reality is, You don't have to spend a huge amount of money, and actually the benefit is you have real clarity on what you are, what you stand for, what your belief systems are, etc. Doing it on your own sometimes, frankly, can be really hard because you're not always honest with yourself. So my view would be it's a good starting point. If you're not clear on those things, then you've got to get that story right, because in the absence of having that story right, any amount of marketing you do is a waste of time. So really get your brilliant basics done, get that sorted, help. I mean, frankly, what we do say to our members all the time is share with us. If you have an issue in that space, if you believe you want it to be reviewed, share it with us. We can either put someone onto it to help you, or we'll give you our own feedback for free. Don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes we can be so internally focused that we don't recognize what we are and how we can actually get out there and tell more people about what we believe in. So I would say that. And I'd also say is that values don't change, but culture needs to change over time. So the sorts of generational attitudes that we have today, we talk about all the time as Gen X, baby boomers, millennials, whatever. The reality is that we're all people at the end of the day, and actually the motivations for coming to work, the motivations for success, the key drivers of why people are involved in this business, those haven't changed. The techniques that you might engage and employ to get people to come along with you have evolved. And I think you just need to be empathetic to that and understand that. And actually, to get the best out of people, it comes down to really realizing that. And one of the things we're talking about for the festival next year is one of the biggest impediments to commercial success is leadership. And leadership is also about new business. It's also about culture. So I think we'll probably spend a bit more time on this particular subject next year and get some great leaders in to talk about it, because that is the key determinant of business success. And frankly, we don't invest enough in it. We don't have PDPs for our leaders. We kind of just, myself included.
Perfect. We'll be doing 360 on you next year then, Stephen.
Looking forward to it. Does it involve a lunch?
It will do. Brilliant. I'm just sort of going to wrap up. Don't think there's any more questions. There isn't any questions that come through. But in terms of everything we just learned from the Festival of New Business, what core capabilities do you think is going to define actually an agency for the next couple of years? What are the core things that they need to really focus on to change now to help them be ready in the future? I'm going to
Rachel, you go first.
Rachel.
I think like the conversations I'm having at the moment is very much about getting the agency in good shape, especially sort of the smaller ones who, maybe don't have that infrastructure. They're the ones that will crumble because, you've got bigger agencies that do. They might not be doing it perfectly, but they're there and they're ahead of the game. So a lot of the smaller agencies, it's conversations we're having about that infrastructure, and that comes in all shapes and sizes. So whether that's team, whether it's even looking at culture, whether it's having vision, mission, values, that type of structure in place, as well as the physical structure of actual software, being able to be they have a website, they are active, they're collating leads into a CRM system instead of into an Excel document. So for me, it's that real bigger picture of the business and evaluating it and looking at where the gaps are, where it's maybe broken and needs fixing, and how that can move along. And that can obviously be replicated for the bigger agencies, but generally they have infrastructure. Whether it's being done right, that's questionable.
Brilliant.
I agree. For me, it's one, get your story right, be really clear about who you are and what your proposition is. Two, then look at all the various different channels you need to engage and employ to be able to build awareness of what you do to the people you're targeting. And that could involve agentic AI. We are experimenting with that on a couple of things at the moment. Tenacity. You've got to be tenacious. You've got to work hard. You've got to be out there. You've got to be relentless if you're going to cut through. You've got to dedicate at least 20% of your working week to business development, and you've got to engage and lean in. No point joining Pimento, no point joining Alliance of Independents, no point joining agency hackers unless you actually engage and lean in. No point actually hiring a new business person unless you give them the support that they need to be successful, and they've got a clear strategy and they've got a clear story to sell. So it's all the basic stuff. But treat your own agency, your own business as if they were a client, and if you won't go far wrong there, and involve everybody in the organization. It's not just the head of new business or the marketing director who's accountable and responsible. Everybody has a responsibility. At the end of the day, if they want their careers to flourish, if they want to earn more money, if they want to get that next promotion, they're as responsible as anyone else in that business to make it a commercial success. And ultimately, we're all here to sell. This is not new business. We're in the business of selling, and that's what we should remember.
I think that, just to back up on that, it's about openness and transparency within your own agency, because they need to understand that everyone's moving in the same direction.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I was going to say, and it's about having that vision, because it goes right back to the absolute bare bones of the business. Like, why are you here in the first place, and what is it you're trying to achieve? And that will have changed over time. And you do have to change as times change as well, with lots of things happening in the world at the moment. What is your vision? Knowing what that is, that then needs to become a communicated, shared vision as well to the wider team. And that will obviously help any agency structure and get ahead. Little plug, I think I've only got one space left, but I am doing a workshop on this next week, but I think there's only one space left. So
there's only one space now.
There's only one. Yeah, I could open it up potentially to a few more, because we always get a few people who don't show. But I'm doing a session on vision building, because we just need to take it back to its absolute bare basics and just ask that question: what is your vision, and how do we get there? And then we fill in the gaps in between.
Isn't it so funny that agencies are very notoriously bad at looking at themselves and doing their own marketing? It often takes years for them to actually get agreement, and it's too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. That is all we have time for. We've got 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. Stephen, Rachel, thank you so much for your time. I think I wasn't unfortunately at the Festival of New Business, but from what I heard, it's been a fantastic event, and actually the highlights that came out from today are really interesting. We are going to be sharing those later in sort of a YouTube video, and also with some sort of the deck that we went through as well. If you want to get in touch with Stephen, Rachel, and myself, please do drop us an email. And then the final bits of housekeeping. So tomorrow night, Stephen and David are to Glasgow, club happening up there, which has been hosted by Viditech and Space 21. You should be able to see in the chat is all the links. As Rachel said, she is hosting next Tuesday a vision session, and it's a vision building workshop. It's really helping an agency build out what their strategic thinking should be and where they should be going. Rachel plugged it better than I did. And then on the 27th of November, we have got our final 5 p.m. club of the year. That is going to be online, and again, register there. And then later this sort of in December, we've got a Christmas newsletter coming out, which is going to announce events happening next year and enable you to keep a track of what's going on online and the events going on and on our website and our portal. So we also have these coming out on Friday events emails as well. But that's it. Thank you very much, Steve and Rachel, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good day, and hope to catch up with you soon.